Something has shifted in the WNBA, and it's becoming impossible to ignore. Just a few weeks ago, most people believed the MVP conversation was already taking shape around the usual names. But after Caitlin Clark's latest run of performances, that discussion suddenly looks very different. The numbers she's putting up aren't just impressive, they're forcing fans, analysts, and even longtime critics to take another look at the race. Whether people expected it or not, Clark has entered the conversation in a way that can no longer be brushed aside. What's making this even more fascinating is that it isn't happening because of one viral highlight or one unforgettable night. It's happening because she's stacking elite performances game after game. Every time she steps onto the court, another record seems to fall, another milestone appears within reach, and another argument emerges for why she deserves to be mentioned alongside the league's biggest stars. When a player consistently delivers at that level, the conversation naturally changes, and that's exactly what's happening now. But there's another reason this story has exploded beyond the box score. While Clark was celebrating another major individual honor, a brief moment involving the Indiana Fever coaching staff quickly spread across social media. A few seconds of video sparked thousands of reactions, with fans debating what they believed they saw and whether it meant anything at all. Some viewers insisted it revealed tension inside the organization, while others argued people were reading far too much into an isolated moment. At this point, there's no confirmed explanation, but the discussion has become impossible to avoid. That combination is what makes this story so compelling. On one side, you have a player putting together one of the strongest stretches of basketball in the league. On the other, you have growing online conversations about the environment surrounding her and how every small moment is now being analyzed under a microscope. Fair or not, that's the reality when one of the biggest stars in professional basketball is involved. And here's the most surprising part. As loud as the debates have become, the strongest argument in Caitlin Clark's favor isn't coming from social media, television, or even passionate fans. It's coming from the numbers themselves. The statistics she's producing over the past several weeks are creating a case that grows stronger every time she plays. Before we get into the reactions and the headlines, we need to start with those numbers because they explain why the MVP race may have just taken a dramatic turn. The first sign that something special was happening was when the league announced Caitlin Clark as the Eastern Conference Player of the Week once again. On the surface, winning the award for a third time this season is already an impressive accomplishment. But the real story goes much deeper than the trophy itself. This hasn't been a season where everything has gone perfectly for Clark. She's dealt with injury setbacks, missed valuable time, and had to work her way back into rhythm while helping Indiana stay competitive. For many players, interruptions like that can completely derail a season. Instead, Clark has returned looking even more confident, more efficient, and more dangerous than before. That's what makes this latest stretch so remarkable. Rather than easing back into form, she's playing some of the best basketball of her professional career. Every game seems to bring another performance that reminds everyone why so many expectations surrounded her entering the league. Instead of simply putting up points, she's controlling the entire flow of games, creating opportunities for teammates and making defenses adjust every time she crosses half court. Take a closer look at what she accomplished during this award-winning week. Clark averaged 25.7 points, 9 assists, and 5 rebounds while shooting an outstanding 53.7% from the field. Those aren't numbers built on one incredible night. They came across multiple games against different opponents. That consistency is what separates great players from elite ones. Anyone can have a hot shooting night, but sustaining that level of production throughout an entire week requires exceptional decision-making, conditioning, and confidence. Perhaps the most impressive part is her efficiency. Early in her professional career, critics often pointed to shot selection or turnovers whenever discussing her game. Recently, those conversations have become much quieter. Clark isn't forcing offense, she's reading defenses, taking high-quality shots, and making opponents pay whenever they commit extra defenders to stop her. The result has been one of the most efficient stretches of basketball she's played since entering the WNBA. Her playmaking has been just as important. While the scoring naturally grabs headlines, averaging 9 assists per game shows how completely she influences every possession. Defenses have to decide whether to pressure her deep beyond the three-point line or collapse into the paint to prevent easy passes. Neither option has worked consistently. If defenders stay attached to shooters, Clark attacks open space herself. If they send help, she finds teammates with pinpoint passes that create easy scoring chances. It's that balance between scoring and facilitating that makes Indiana's offense look completely different when she's operating at her best. And what's even more impressive is that this surge isn't happening in isolation. It's arriving after a season already filled with historic accomplishments. Clark has continued adding milestones to a resume that seems to grow every week. Record-breaking assist performances, milestone scoring totals, and all-around statistical achievements have become almost routine. For most players, those moments define an entire career. For Clark, they've become part of an ongoing trend that's still unfolding.
Of course, weekly awards alone don't determine how a season will ultimately be remembered. They're snapshots of a player performing at an elite level during a specific stretch of games. But when those snapshots keep piling up, they begin telling a much bigger story. 3 Player of the Week honors, despite missing time because of injury, suggest that when she's healthy, Clark has consistently performed among the very best players in the league. And that's exactly why this latest award feels different. It's no longer just recognition for another impressive week. It represents growing evidence that Caitlin Clark is putting together one of the strongest second halves of the season in the entire WNBA. The weekly honors are adding up, the statistics continue climbing, and with every dominant performance, the conversation around her season becomes harder to dismiss. But if these performances are changing perceptions across the league, the biggest impact may be on the race for the league's most prestigious individual award. For much of the season, the MVP race felt like a conversation that already had its favorites. Caitlin Clark's name was certainly mentioned, but it often came with qualifiers. People pointed to the games she missed, questioned whether Indiana would finish high enough in the standings, or argued that other stars had built stronger cases over the course of the year. Those were fair discussions at the time. But the deeper this season goes, the more those conversations are beginning to shift. The biggest reason is simple. Clark isn't just maintaining her level of play, she's raising it when the pressure is at its highest. The second half of the season is where MVP campaigns are often won or lost. This is when every game carries greater weight, playoff races tighten, and every standout performance is viewed through a different lens. Instead of slowing down, Clark has found another gear, delivering complete performances that impact every area of the game. Her influence goes far beyond the points column. Every possession seems to begin with the defense trying to figure out where she is on the floor. The moment she crosses half court, defenders are already adjusting, knowing she has the ability to pull up from deep, drive into the paint, or find an open teammate with a pass few players even attempt. That kind of attention doesn't always appear in a box score, but it changes the way entire games are played. Then there are the milestones. Throughout this season, Caitlin has continued building a resume filled with historic accomplishments, record-setting assist performances, remarkable scoring achievements, and games that immediately entered the WNBA record books have become increasingly common. Every time it seems she's reached another milestone, another opportunity appears just a few nights later. Those aren't just impressive statistics, they're reminders that she's producing numbers rarely seen in league history. Perhaps the strongest part of her MVP case is consistency. Elite players can explode for 35 or 40 points on any given night, but MVP voters often look for something even more valuable, the ability to impact winning every single game. Caitlin has been doing exactly that. Whether her shot is falling early or defenses focus entirely on stopping her, she continues finding ways to control the pace, create offense, and put Indiana in position to compete. Of course, no MVP race exists in a vacuum. Individual brilliance is important, but team success almost always plays a major role in how voters evaluate candidates. If the Fever continue climbing the standings and finish the regular season on a strong run, Clark's recent performances become even more meaningful. Every victory strengthens her argument because it shows her numbers aren't simply impressive, they're translating into results when Indiana needs them most. That's why every remaining game feels so significant. There are no easy nights left, and every performance will be compared directly with the league's other MVP contenders. One spectacular week can grab headlines, but sustaining this level over the final stretch is what separates a strong candidate from a true favorite. Clark appears to understand that challenge. Rather than chasing individual accolades, she's playing with the urgency of someone focused on winning, knowing the personal recognition often follows team success. What's especially interesting is how quickly public perception can change. Earlier in the year, much of the conversation centered on whether Clark could overcome injuries and early season inconsistency. Now the discussion has evolved into something much bigger: whether anyone has been playing better basketball over the past several weeks. That's a completely different debate, and one that says a great deal about the level she's reached. Still, no MVP campaign is complete without measuring it against the player many believe remains the standard of excellence in the league. And that's where this conversation becomes even more fascinating, because standing on the other side is a superstar whose dominance has defined the WNBA for years. The next comparison may ultimately decide how this entire race unfolds. Every MVP race reaches the same moment. The conversation stops being about whether a player deserves consideration and starts becoming a direct comparison between the leading candidates. That's exactly where this season appears to be heading. As impressive as Caitlin Clark has been, the biggest obstacle standing between her and the league's highest individual honor is A'ja Wilson, a player whose dominance has already secured her place among the greatest in the WNBA history. Wilson hasn't simply been excellent this season, she's continued performing at a level that most players can only dream about. Night after night, she has delivered elite scoring, controlled the glass, protected the rim, and remained the centerpiece of her team's success. It's the kind of all-around production that has made her the benchmark for MVP conversations over the past several years. Any player hoping to win the award knows they'll eventually have to measure up against what Wilson has accomplished.
But here's what makes this year's race so compelling. For the first time in a while, another player is building a statistical case that demands serious attention. Clark isn't matching Wilson in exactly the same ways, but she's impacting games just as dramatically through a completely different style. Wilson dominates with her physical presence in the paint, while Clark controls games with her shooting range, court vision, and ability to create offense from virtually anywhere on the floor. They're two completely different players producing elite results in two completely different ways. That contrast is what makes comparing them so fascinating. Wilson's game is built around efficiency inside, rebounding, and defensive impact. Clark's value comes from stretching defenses far beyond the three-point line, creating scoring opportunities for everyone around her, and dictating the tempo every time she has the ball. One player forces opponents to collapse into the paint, while the other forces defenses to extend farther than they're comfortable. Both strategies create impossible decisions for opposing coaches. Statistics naturally become a huge part of this discussion. Wilson continues putting up numbers that would make her the clear MVP favorite in almost any season. At the same time, Clark's recent surge has narrowed the conversation considerably. Her scoring efficiency has climbed, her assist numbers remain among the league's best, and her ability to contribute across multiple categories has turned every game into another piece of evidence supporting her campaign. It's no longer just about who scores the most points, it's about who has the greatest overall impact on winning. Another factor voters will almost certainly consider is how each player elevates the people around them. Clark's passing has transformed Indiana's offense, creating easier opportunities for teammates while opening the floor in ways that weren't consistently happening before. Wilson influences her team differently, drawing defensive attention that creates space inside while anchoring the defense on the other end. Both players make everyone around them better, but they accomplish it through completely different skill sets. Then there's the team success element, which has historically carried enormous weight in MVP voting. If Indiana continues winning during the final weeks of the season, Clark's case becomes significantly stronger. Every victory reinforces the idea that her individual brilliance is directly translating into meaningful results.
On the other hand, if the Fever struggle while Wilson's team maintains its position near the top of the standings, that could become one of the strongest arguments in Wilson's favor when ballots are submitted. It's also worth remembering that MVP voting rarely comes down to a single statistic. Voters often weigh leadership, consistency, availability, team performance, and the overall influence a player has throughout an entire season. That's why the final stretch matters so much. One unforgettable performance can capture headlines, but sustained excellence over the closing weeks is often what separates the winner from the runner-up. For fans, this is exactly the kind of race you hope to see. Instead of one player running away with the award months before the season ends, the debate continues evolving with every game. Clark keeps adding memorable performances, while Wilson continues reminding everyone why she's considered one of the sport's all-time greats. Neither player is giving the other much room to pull ahead, which means every remaining matchup, every stat line, and every team result becomes another chapter in one of the biggest stories of the season. But while the MVP discussion continued to dominate basketball headlines, something much smaller and far more unexpected suddenly caught the attention of fans online. It lasted only a few moments, yet it quickly became one of the most talked about clips surrounding the Indiana Fever all week. Just when the spotlight seemed completely focused on Caitlin Clark's growing MVP campaign, an entirely different conversation started spreading across social media. It wasn't about a highlight play, a deep three-pointer, or another record-breaking assist. Instead, it centered on a brief moment captured during the announcement of Caitlin Clark's latest Eastern Conference Player of the Week honor. Within hours, that short clip was circulating everywhere, with thousands of fans offering their own interpretations of what they believed they had just witnessed. The person at the center of that discussion was Indiana Fever assistant coach Brianne January. During the announcement, cameras briefly showed her expression, and some viewers immediately claimed she appeared less enthusiastic than expected. The clip was replayed repeatedly across social platforms, with fans slowing it down, zooming in, and debating whether her reaction meant anything at all. As often happens online, a moment lasting only a few seconds quickly became one of the biggest talking points of the week. Some fans argued that the reaction looked unusually subdued for a coach whose player had just earned another major individual honor. Others believed people were reading far too much into an isolated moment, pointing out that a single facial expression rarely tells the full story. Without knowing exactly what was happening off camera, or what January may have been thinking at that instant, it's impossible to draw any firm conclusions. A few seconds of video simply cannot explain someone's intentions or emotions with certainty.
Still, that didn't stop the discussion from growing. Across social media, countless theories began circulating. Some posts suggested the moment reflected internal frustration, while others wondered whether attention should have gone to another Fever player after several outstanding performances. It's important to emphasize that these remain fan interpretations and online speculation. There has been no official statement suggesting the clip reflected dissatisfaction, nor has any credible evidence confirmed the assumptions being shared online. What made the conversation spread so quickly wasn't just the clip itself, it was the timing. Clark had just received another significant individual award while her MVP campaign was gaining momentum. Every achievement she earns now receives enormous public attention, meaning even the smallest moments surrounding her are examined from every possible angle. That's the reality of becoming one of the league's biggest stars. Every celebration, every interaction, and every sideline reaction can suddenly become part of a much larger conversation. This isn't unique to the WNBA either. Across professional sports, cameras capture hundreds of reactions during every game, press conference, and award presentation. Most pass unnoticed. But when an athlete becomes one of the biggest stories in sports, ordinary moments often take on a life of their own. Fans begin searching for clues, body language becomes a topic of debate, and harmless interactions can quickly become viral discussions. Whether those interpretations are accurate is often impossible to determine. In Anya's case, there are countless explanations that could account for what viewers believed they saw. She may have been looking toward another part of the room, thinking about the next practice, reacting to something unrelated, or simply maintaining a neutral expression. Without direct confirmation from those involved, assigning a specific meaning would be unfair. That's why separating observable facts from online speculation is so important.
What is factual is that the clip reignited conversations many fans were already having about the Indiana Fever. Because Caitlin Clark's season has attracted unprecedented attention, supporters have become increasingly interested in every aspect of the organization's culture, coaching decisions, and public interactions. Whether fairly or unfairly, every new moment is now viewed through that broader lens. And that's exactly why this brief video became such a major story. On its own, it may have been nothing more than a routine sideline moment, but placed alongside months of intense public scrutiny surrounding the Fever, it immediately fueled another wave of questions from fans eager to understand what life inside the organization is really like. Those questions have continued growing, and they lead directly into another important discussion surrounding the team's internal dynamics and one of Indiana's other standout stars. Whether the viral clip meant anything or not, one thing is impossible to deny. It reignited a conversation that has followed the Indiana Fever for much of the season. As Caitlin Clark's profile has continued to grow, so has the attention surrounding every decision the organization makes. Every substitution, every timeout, even every sideline interaction is now being examined by a fan base that watches this team more closely than almost any other in the league. That level of attention creates an environment where even ordinary moments can become major storylines. A coach looking away at the wrong time, a delayed reaction during a celebration, or a brief exchange on the bench can quickly become the center of online debate. That's exactly what happened here. While some fans viewed the moment as evidence of deeper issues, others argued it simply reflected how easy it is to misunderstand a few seconds of video without any context. The truth is that nobody outside the Fever organization knows what the day-to-day atmosphere is actually like. Practices aren't public, team meetings stay private, conversations between coaches and players happen behind closed doors. Because of that, it's important to separate what can be observed from what can only be guessed. Fans can analyze body language and discuss possible interpretations, but those discussions should never be mistaken for confirmed facts. Even so, the speculation didn't appear out of nowhere. Throughout the season, Fever supporters have debated several coaching decisions involving Clark and the team's offensive approach. There have been discussions about late-game play calling, lineup combinations, rotation changes, and how often the offense should run through its young superstar. Every close loss or unexpected decision has fueled another round of questions about whether the team is maximizing its talent. When a player is producing at an MVP level, every strategic decision naturally comes under greater scrutiny. Fans begin asking whether she's getting enough touches, whether the offense is taking full advantage of her playmaking, and whether the coaching staff is putting the team in the best possible position to succeed. Those are normal discussions that happen around every championship contender, especially when a franchise has a player capable of changing games the way Clark can. Another factor making these conversations louder is the unprecedented spotlight surrounding the Fever. Attendance has surged, television ratings continue drawing attention, national media follows the team almost daily, and social media clicks spread within minutes of every game. That kind of visibility means the organization isn't operating under the same microscope as most teams. Small moments that might go completely unnoticed elsewhere often become headline topics simply because millions of people are paying attention. At the same time, it's easy to overlook something equally important. The Fever have several talented players enjoying outstanding seasons. Kelsey Mitchell has delivered some of the best scoring performances of her career. Aaliyah Boston continues to develop into one of the league's premier frontcourt players, while the rest of the roster has embraced important roles during Indiana's playoff push. Balancing multiple stars while developing team chemistry is never a simple task, and coaching staffs across every professional league face similar challenges throughout long seasons.
That's why it's important not to reduce every conversation to one viral clip or one social media theory. Organizations evolve throughout a season. Relationships between players and coaches continue developing. Adjustments are constantly being made, and what appears significant from the outside may have an entirely different explanation internally. Until those inside the organization choose to address a particular topic, much of the public discussion remains exactly that, discussion. What cannot be debated, however, is the impact Clark's rise has had on the franchise. Her success has elevated expectations for everyone involved. Fans no longer measure the Fever simply by wins and losses. They analyze every decision through the lens of building a championship contender around one of basketball's brightest young stars. That level of expectation creates pressure, but it also reflects how dramatically the organization has changed in such a short period of time. While much of the attention is focused on Caitlin Clark, another Fever veteran has quietly been putting together an incredible stretch of basketball herself. In fact, her recent scoring run became part of the very debate surrounding Player of the Week honors, and her performances deserve just as much recognition as the headlines she's been generating. Amid all the attention surrounding Caitlin Clark's MVP campaign, another Indiana Fever star has quietly been putting together one of the most impressive scoring stretches in the league. Kelsey Mitchell may not be dominating every headline, but her recent performances have reminded everyone why she's long been considered one of the WNBA's most dangerous offensive players. Night after night, she's delivered exactly what every contender needs from a veteran leader: consistent scoring when the team needs it most. The performance that grabbed the most attention came against Minnesota, where Mitchell exploded for 37 points in one of the best individual games of her season. She seemed unstoppable from the opening minutes, knocking down difficult shots, attacking the basket with confidence, and finding ways to score regardless of how the defense adjusted. It was the kind of offensive display that can completely change the momentum of a game and leave opposing coaches searching for answers. That wasn't an isolated performance either. Mitchell has been building an impressive streak of 20-point games, showing the kind of consistency that separates elite scorers from players who simply have the occasional hot night. Defenses know exactly what she's trying to do, yet she continues finding ways to create space and deliver in big moments. Whether it's pulling up from mid-range, attacking off the dribble, or knocking down perimeter shots, Mitchell has become one of the Fever's most reliable offensive weapons. Naturally, those performances led some fans to ask whether she should have received Eastern Conference Player of the Week instead. From a basketball perspective, it's a fair conversation. Scoring 37 points against a strong opponent is an achievement worthy of recognition, and Mitchell's overall run has played a major role in Indiana's success. Supporters who felt she deserved stronger consideration weren't ignoring Clark's accomplishments. They were simply highlighting just how well Mitchell has been playing. However, Player of the Week honors aren't decided by one unforgettable game alone. The award recognizes a player's body of work across the entire week, evaluating consistency over multiple matchups rather than one standout performance. That's where Clark's overall production stood out. Averaging 25.7 points, 9 assists, and 5 rebounds, while shooting better than 53% from the field, represented an all-around contribution that extended beyond scoring. She wasn't only finishing possessions herself, she was creating opportunities for teammates while influencing every aspect of Indiana's offense. That's what makes comparing the two performances so interesting. Mitchell delivered explosive scoring, capable of taking over a game almost single-handedly. Clark combined high-level scoring with elite playmaking and efficient shooting across several contests. Both players produced winning basketball, but they did so in completely different ways. One overwhelmed defenses as a scorer, while the other controlled games through a blend of scoring, passing, and decision-making. Perhaps the biggest takeaway is that Indiana's recent success hasn't been built around just one player. Clark's emergence has understandably drawn enormous attention, but Mitchell's offensive consistency has provided the perfect complement. When opponents focus heavily on slowing Clark, Mitchell has repeatedly stepped forward with big scoring nights. When Mitchell attracts extra defensive attention, Clark's passing often creates easier opportunities elsewhere on the floor. That balance has made the Fever far more difficult to defend than they were earlier in the season.
It's also worth remembering how much Mitchell's role has evolved over the years. Before Clark arrived, Mitchell often carried the responsibility of being Indiana's primary offensive option. Defenses could load up against her without worrying about another elite playmaker controlling the game. Now, while the spotlight has shifted, Mitchell has adapted remarkably well. Instead of resisting change, she's embraced the opportunity to thrive alongside another superstar, and the results have benefited both players and the team as a whole. As the regular season enters its most important stretch, Indiana's hopes won't depend on Clark or Mitchell individually. They'll depend on both stars continuing to perform at this level together. Clark's vision and playmaking, combined with Mitchell's scoring punch, give the Fever one of the most dangerous backcourts in the league. If that chemistry continues developing, Indiana could become an even bigger threat than many expected just a few months ago. And that's what makes the final weeks of the season so intriguing. Individual awards will dominate headlines, but every remaining game will ultimately shape how this remarkable season is remembered. For Caitlin Clark, the challenge now is clear. Continue producing at an MVP level, keep leading Indiana to victories, and finish one of the strongest campaigns of her young professional career. Now comes the part of the season where every possession feels bigger than the last. Weekly awards have been handed out. Historic milestones have been celebrated. The MVP conversation has intensified with every game. But none of that guarantees how this story will end. In many ways, Caitlin Clark's toughest challenge is still ahead of her. The remaining schedule leaves very little room for error. Every matchup carries playoff implications, and every performance will be examined alongside the league's other MVP contenders. One outstanding game can generate headlines for a day, but voters tend to remember who consistently delivered when the pressure reached its highest point. That's exactly where Clark now finds herself. The expectations surrounding her have never been greater, and every time she steps onto the floor, another opportunity awaits to strengthen or weaken her case. The first priority is staying healthy. Earlier in the season, injuries interrupted her rhythm and forced Indiana to adjust without its primary playmaker. Since returning, Clark has looked increasingly comfortable, but the physical demands of a long professional season are relentless. Opposing defenses continue making her the focal point of every game plan, often throwing multiple defenders at her and forcing her to absorb constant contact. Maintaining her level of play while navigating that physical challenge will be one of the biggest factors in the weeks ahead. Just as important is maintaining the remarkable efficiency she's shown during this recent stretch. Scoring has never been the only reason Clark is considered special. What separates her is the combination of shot-making, court vision, and decision-making that allows her to impact nearly every possession. If she continues shooting efficiently while creating easy opportunities for teammates, she'll keep giving voters fresh evidence that her influence extends far beyond traditional statistics. Of course, individual numbers alone rarely decide an MVP race. Team success has always been part of the equation, and this season is unlikely to be any different. Every Indiana victory adds another layer to Clark's resume because it reinforces the idea that her production directly contributes to winning basketball. If the Fever continue climbing the standings and enter the postseason with momentum, her candidacy becomes considerably stronger. On the other hand, if the team struggles during the final stretch, the conversation could quickly shift in favor of another contender. That's what makes every remaining game so fascinating. Clark isn't competing in isolation. She's being measured against elite players who continue producing remarkable performances of their own. Every night brings another comparison, another debate, and another opportunity for someone to seize momentum in the race. The margins between candidates are often much smaller than fans realize, and a single week of exceptional basketball can dramatically reshape the entire discussion. Another element working in Clark's favor is the confidence she appears to be playing with. Earlier in the season, there were moments when opposing defenses successfully disrupted Indiana's offensive rhythm. Now, the game seems to be slowing down for her. She recognizes double teams more quickly, makes faster decisions, and appears increasingly comfortable controlling the pace regardless of what the defense presents. That's a natural progression for elite players, and it's happening at exactly the right time. Perhaps the biggest difference between this stage of the season and the beginning is perception. Months ago, many conversations focused on whether Clark would eventually become an MVP-caliber player. That question has largely disappeared.
the discussion has evolved into whether she's doing enough to win the award right now. That's a significant shift, and it reflects just how dramatically her performances have changed the narrative over the course of the season. Still, no MVP campaign is remembered because of hype alone. Awards are ultimately earned through sustained excellence, meaningful victories, and the ability to perform when expectations are at their highest. Clark has positioned herself squarely in that conversation, but the final chapter has yet to be written. The remaining games will determine whether this remarkable run becomes an unforgettable MVP season or simply another milestone in what already looks like an extraordinary career.
One thing, however, is already becoming clear. Regardless of how the final vote unfolds, Caitlin Clark has transformed this race into one of the most compelling storylines of the entire WNBA season. And if her recent performances are any indication, the biggest moments may still be waiting just around the corner. When you step back and look at everything that's happened over the past several weeks, one conclusion becomes increasingly difficult to argue against. Caitlin Clark has forced her way into the center of the MVP conversation. This is no longer about potential, popularity, or preseason expectations. It's about production. Week after week, she's delivered performances that place her alongside the very best players in the WNBA, and every game seems to add another chapter to what has already become a remarkable season. Winning Eastern Conference Player of the Week for the third time is more than just another accolade to add to her resume. It represents sustained excellence over the course of a season that hasn't always been easy. Injuries interrupted her rhythm, defenses adjusted specifically to slow her down, and expectations remained higher than almost any player entering the league has ever experienced. Instead of fading under that pressure, she's responded with some of the most efficient and complete basketball of her professional career. At the same time, the MVP race remains exactly what fans hope it will be, a true competition. A'ja Wilson continues to perform at an extraordinary level, reminding everyone why she's already considered one of the greatest players the league has ever seen. Rather than taking anything away from Wilson's accomplishments, Clark's recent surge has simply elevated the conversation. Instead of having one obvious favorite, the league now has two elite players building compelling cases through very different styles of basketball. That's a win for the sport, and a storyline that should only become more exciting as the regular season reaches its conclusion. The discussions surrounding the Indiana Fever will likely continue as well. Whether it's coaching decisions, player rotations, or viral moments that capture attention online, this franchise has become one of the most closely watched teams in professional basketball. As we've discussed, some of those conversations are based on confirmed events, while others are driven by fan interpretations and social media speculation. It's important to separate those two, because the only thing that can truly be measured is what happens on the court. And on the court, the numbers continue speaking louder than anything else. Her scoring has become more efficient, her playmaking remains among the league's elite. Her leadership has helped Indiana continue pushing toward meaningful games late in the season, and her ability to perform under immense pressure has become one of the defining stories of the year. Those aren't opinions, they're reflected in the performances she's putting together every time she steps between the lines. Of course, the final outcome hasn't been decided. The remaining games will carry enormous weight, and every possession could influence how voters evaluate the league's top candidates. Team success, individual consistency, and clutch performances will all play a role before the ballots are cast. Nothing is guaranteed, and that's exactly what makes the finish so compelling. Whether Caitlin Clark ultimately wins the MVP award or not, one thing has already changed. She has transformed what once seemed like a distant possibility into one of the biggest debates in the WNBA. Every game now feels like another opportunity to strengthen her case, while every outstanding performance from A'ja Wilson keeps the race as competitive as ever.
Fans aren't just watching great basketball anymore. They're witnessing two exceptional players pushing each other toward an unforgettable finish. The final weeks of the season will answer the biggest question of all. Will Caitlin Clark complete one of the most impressive MVP campaigns in recent memory? Or will another superstar hold on to the league's highest individual honor? Whatever happens, one thing is certain. The race is real, the competition is fierce, and basketball fans won't want to miss a single moment of what's coming next.